don't put too much stress on your first kiss. It'll happen, but like it gets better, more funnier, and like
Yeah. And it only gets magical if you're actually in love with the person, like later on after you've kissed them a lot. But
yeah.
usually the first kiss.
I prefer women, but I want a guy to force himself on me. I am open to trans women doing the same, but I don't see too many of them wanting. Oh, some of them do like work off the side because like some of them are actually sex workers. So like there's never a shortage for someone to take a nice 40-year-old hairy man aside and take him. just really take him.
Is one last kiss, but she won't let me have it. I want to get over her, but I can't. I need help. Hey, this is Morgan Rector. Join me and my co-host Rosanna Chilton for the Confession Post podcast. ConfessionPost.com is a website where users post highly personal content anonymously for the reading pleasure of other users. On this podcast, Rosanna and I read confessions from the site and give our analysis. You can listen to the Confession Post podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I am Rachel Telfor.
And I'm Michelle Gower.
We are the hosts of a new true crime podcast.
It is called Children of the Void.
The Void refers to children who are missing.
And children who have died under mysterious and suspicious circumstances.
Sometimes parents know nothing about what has happened to their child.
And sometimes they seem to know more than they let on.
Like Casey Anthony.
And the John Benet Ramsey case.
We are determined to do our part to find missing children.
And the truth when the story of their disappearance doesn't hold up.
Together, we will blast the shadows with light so that no more children disappear into the void.
Children of the Void debuts in September.
Join us so we can all make a difference.
Please subscribe.
Until then, I'm Rachel Telfor.
And I'm Michelle Gower.
You can catch Children of the Void on Apple, Spotify, YouTube,
and everywhere else you get your podcasts.
Hey, Morgan Rector here. I'm just dropping a line to say thank you to all of my Patreon donors. Since I'm not a Joe Rogan or Mark Maron, podcasting is more or less a starving artist gig for guys like me. Patreon donations keep me from having to take a job that would take away from my ability to generate more Human Monsters content. The website URL for Patreon is www.patreon, that's spelled patreon.com/leader, O-N-E, leader 1. A way to make a one-time donation is to send it through PayPal at Morgan Rector 331, Rector spelled R-E-C-T-O-R, at hotmail.com, morganrector331 at hotmail.com. You don't have to give a large amount of money if it isn't possible. If $1 a month or $1 one time is the best you can pony up, it would be gratefully accepted. I know how hard things are for everybody during COVID. Thank you for all the support you have given the show, whether it is through financial donations or simply by listening. I am grateful for all you have given to me and the program. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the True Crime News. This is a special episode about cults and the experiences of three people who grew up in one called the Faith Assembly, whose leader was Hobart Freeman. Their names are Joshua Wilson, Bill Selby, and Avanah Sophia. They experienced traumas that continue to haunt them to some degree today. However, they are brave survivors, and their efforts to overcome this hardship were inspiring to Rachel and myself, and I'm sure they will affect you in the same way. Enjoy. All right, welcome to the True Crime News, and we have a special edition this week because we're speaking to three people who have been in cults in the past. I've always wanted to do an episode about cults, and but I never knew which one to focus on. So yes, today we have, aside from my co-host Rachel Telfor and myself, Morgan Rector, we have Avanah Sophia, George Selby, and Joshua Wilson. Nice to see you, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, so what I'm going to focus on just to begin with, and I'm going to go around one by one rather than have you, kind of talk over each other, is my first question is, how did you become a member of the cult? Were you born into it, or were you a convert? How about we start with Avanah?
Or what was the cult, actually, as if I want to know first.
We're going to get to that. Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So I was born into the cult. My parents and I, both of my parents were not. They joined. I was born into it, and was a part of it for 18 years because my father was one of the pastors in the cult. And then I was actually kicked out of my home, and I was homeless at 18. So I was in the cult from birth till 18.
Wow.
And how about you, George?
This Bill, please, though. I don't. I go by Bill.
Bill.
But anyway, that's all right. I don't know how my first name came up on there, but I don't like it.
Okay.
But basically, we were my family, my mom, my dad, me, and my sister. We were part of a Baptist church until probably I want to say 4 or 5, maybe 6, and I don't know how we wound up going to this church. It was held in somebody's house, and the place was cram-packed full and everything, and we just started going there instead. And for some reason, it was apparently a sin for my mom and dad to be together, married, because both of them had been married previous times. So essentially what they were saying is my sister and I were products of sin. So
Wow.
they made they basically brainwashed my mom into divorcing my dad, and she went on this quest about trying to find her first husband, who was just basically a college fling that they got married because she had gotten pregnant. And my
That was
dad,
with both you and your sibling from the same person?
yeah, we have
Okay.
my sister and I have an older brother out there somewhere that we've never met.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And
Go ahead.
And Joshua, how did you come to be involved?
Well, my dad was in college and my mom was in college. He was going to go pre-med. She was going to be a nurse. But along to Winamac, Indiana came an evangelist from the cult. So they both dropped out of school, got married when they were 20 or 21, and they had me. So I was born into Hobart Freeman's Faith Assembly, and my formative memories are going to the main church.
Okay, so you were all a member of that organization?
Yeah. My father also dropped out of college too, because the Lord called him to this new calling. He dropped out of college as well.
I was in a satellite group that was based out of Florida, but Faith Assembly had, it had branches all over the United States and even in other parts of the world and over in Europe as well.
My father's church is still going.
So this is kind of like
really?
It's kind of like the Children of God cult. They're trying to take over the world or convert the world, I guess.
Nothing as demented and disgusting happened with Faith Assembly as happened with Children of God, but had this main Pastor, Pastor or Dr. Freeman, had he not died, and I'm sure we'll get to his death later, but had he not died, who knows what would have become of them? Who knows what Faith Assembly would have become?
Yeah, they do tend to be very leader focused. I noticed.
Mm-hmm.
So like the church I grew up in, which my dad eventually became the pastor of, was also like a satellite church based out of New Hampshire. We would also visit another church in Maine. My dad's church is still a formed church. It's a very small home church, but really fucked up, demented stuff went on in that church and in my family. And he's still running that church, leading that church. And they still, like, I went through years of literally just sitting in church, listening to Hobart Freeman's tapes. Like, my dad wouldn't even teach sometimes. We'd all just sit in front of a tape player for hours and listen to this dead man preach at us. And then we would follow all of his teachings.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's an easy gig. That's an easy gig for your dad.
Yeah, right. So Rachel, next question's yours.
I have like 50 zillion questions right now. So, okay, so because for the listeners, so Faith Assembly is kind of like the umbrella name for, let's say, the religious belief that you were following, the cult you were following.
Yeah, Faith Assembly was the umbrella.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, there was a lot of satellites kind of sprung out, particularly the Midwest, but all the way to Maine, like Avanah said, and there were even a few satellites in Germany and England and things. So he had like an international radio ministry, and he tried to spread the good word everywhere.
Okay.
For example, like Faith Assembly is the umbrella name, but like my dad's church was called Upper Room Faith Assembly, and then like the church we'd go visit in Vermont was like Christian Faith Assembly. We called it CFA. But
wait a minute, Avanah, yours was Upper Room?
Mm-hmm.
So was mine at one point.
Really?
Back in the 80s. Now there was
came from, because he started in Indiana, and then when he moved out here, like, I don't know. He
that's
probably
weird.
Everything, because
No, do you guys all know each other?
Only
previous to this interview.
We kind of. There's like a Facebook group for, like, I don't know, I call it, like, survivors. It's just like Children of Faith Assembly, and we've all, like, kind of, people post in there about anything and everything related to, like, surviving Faith Assembly, basically.
Wow.
So we all kind of, and Josh and I have actually met a few times in person. So
that's wonderful. Okay, so since two of you were born into this, if you can remember or know anything, describe kind of the indoctrination or brainwashing process of this religion / cult. And then how did the leader, which would be, I'm assuming, Hobart Freeman, I don't know a lot about this, so I'm very excited, convince his followers that what he was telling and his beliefs was true.
Josh, why don't you take that?
So he was a very charismatic guy. He had his doctorate from a very conservative Grace Seminary, I believe it was, in Indiana. So, and it was a time of kind of tumultuous time. I think the early 60s or late 60s and early 70s, when people were questioning lots of things. And here was a guy with all the answers.
Yeah, no kidding.
Very charismatic, authoritative. He just kind of one of those personalities that, like, he spoke and that everyone stands up to attention, kind of a thing. And I think he started out fairly, not too crazy, but he just kind of got a little more deeper and deeper throughout the years. And I think that's kind of how, like, my parents were good intention. They weren't, trying to be evil people or trying to get in a cult. They thought they were doing the best thing. And this guy got crazier and crazier. And my parents and other people just kind of followed him along.
I was recently listening to another podcast on another cult, and actually this was a really great analogy. It says, if you throw a frog in boiling water, he's going to jump out because he knows he's dying. But if you put him in a pot of stagnant water and slowly heat it up, they will die because they don't realize that they're following that process. Yeah. Do you think maybe that's kind of how he started? Like, he's like, oh, let me I have this crazy vision. Maybe I'm, smoking some weed. I don't even know. It was the 60s and 70s. Who knows? You know what I'm saying? But it caught traction and then maybe grew.
And I'm speaking from what I've learned from adults, meaning adults when I was a kid, and their memories more than mine, because I'm not sure I'd trust my judgment, as a 3-year-old or 4-year-old back.
No kidding.
But what you said is exactly as they've described it. Yes.
Okay.
That the frog in the boiling water slowly just putting the temperature up and up, I think is a good analogy.
Yeah, I like that too.
Another thing that plays into it a lot is so Hobart Freeman died before I was born, but I'm still affected by him because my father was so affected by him that it got spread into another generation. Like I can hear Hobart Freeman's voice in my head because every night my dad would listen to tapes and tapes and tapes of his next to my bedroom, and I would just hear him. But my dad and him, I think, have a lot in common because same thing with my dad. Like I remember when I was 4, I was allowed to celebrate birthdays. By the time I was like 10, birthdays were not allowed to be celebrated. Like my dad also continued to get like more and more wrapped up in like what laws he would put on his church. And I think that has a lot to do with a narcissistic personality as well. I think once this narcissistic person like Hobart Freeman or my father starts to kind of like feel the power that they have, they become addicted to it, and then they want to throw another rule on and see everyone bend to their favor, and then throw another one, and just like they're kind of feeding their own ego through this like religion that they're kind of creating. And I think that's a huge part of it as well. And now next thing you know, if you created an entire world and you've made yourself into a monster, and like you have to live in denial now because you fucked yourself over. So
I mean, how many go, Bill, sorry.
Another way that they were able to basically slowly turn up the temperature of the water is they would get in there and they would isolate you. They'd isolate all of your friends. Our church, our religion is the only religion. We're the only people who are Christians. Everybody else, unless you're part of this church,
right,
everybody else is going to hell. So immediately, all of your friends and family and everything, they convince you that your friends and family outside of the church are evil. I mean, my mom didn't talk to my grandmother for several years because my grandmother was, just blown away how stupid, about how stupid this whole thing was. My dad, like I said, even though they divorced he divorced my mother, my dad, I mean, he showed up there every week to go to church when he could, just to be around me and my sister. But he hated my mom for it for a long time, and he hated the church the entire time. But that's a big part. They isolate you, and they get you beat down and questioning everything. You get to the point. I mean, it's
that's brainwashing. It is brainwashing, isn't it?
Brainwashing. Kind of like how people today freak out if you don't have a mask on. That's the way we were whenever we were around. Somebody would say a Kiss T-shirt on or an Iron Maiden T-shirt or what? Oh my God, the blood of Jesus!
The world. They
protect us
from the world and weaponize it.
That's so scary.
Like,
and as children, to be in so young when you don't have a choice is just mind blowing to me.
Even like other churches and other pastors are false prophets, and it's just the devil disguised as a godly person so that these people think they're following the Lord, but they're really following the devil. And like, we're the only ones that have actually figured it out. We're the chosen people. Like, you are so lucky that you are with these people that are God's right hand people. Like, everyone else thinks they figured it out, and they're the ones that are brainwashed, and they haven't figured it out. And like, then you get out and you're like, holy shit, you are the false prophet.
Yeah. I think that actually segues really well into a really important question before we delve further, because I literally could talk to you guys for a very long time, that Morgan has up next. So Morgan, if you want to ask that question, because I'm dying.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's actually a good segue into this question. So there's the belief that you guys were the true religion, whichever religion believes, of course. So what were the cult's core beliefs aside from that? What, everyone has its own belief system, and you got to memorize it. You got to know it backwards and forwards. So what were the beliefs?
For me, the main thing that I feel like I remember being just like taught all the time was faith, divine healing, and modesty. That's like, I feel like my entire childhood was revolved around those three things. Divine healing is basically believing that God is capable of healing any problem that you have with your body or mental state. And it's basically relying on your faith in him. So if you're sick and you're not healed, it's because you have sin in your life and it's your fault and you need to repent, and then God will heal you. And then there's the whole faith thing, like, don't buckle your seatbelt, don't go to the doctor, don't do anything. God will protect you. Don't even lock the doors. He'll keep your house safe. If you have to lock your doors, that means you don't trust in God to keep your house safe. Like, all of that type of stuff. And then modesty. My dad and Hobart Freeman, all they talk about is how a woman dresses and how a woman behaves, and don't cause your brother to stumble, and be meek and quiet, and Proverbs 31 woman. That's a chapter out of the Bible. Like, for me, my personal experience, those were the three main things that I feel like were just the main beliefs.
I feel like particularly the women and girls were gaslighted way before it was cool.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeff, do you have, or I'm sorry, Bill, do you have the same, do you have anything different to add to what you believe?
Yeah, faith healing was basically the foundation for all of it. And you know, but between the churches and all the satellites and everything, there were over 100 people that died of things that were medically preventable. Like Hobart Freeman himself died of preventable diabetes complications.
I had two brothers that died, and they didn't need to.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my. What did they die from? Sorry, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's horrible.
I had a brother that died the day after he was born, and basically we never really got an answer of why, but I know the story of when he died, and 911 was not called before they started laying hands and praying on a child that wasn't.
Oh my God.
And my mom had another brother, he was stillborn, but when you see a midwife and you don't ever get a scan of the baby and you don't see a doctor, I'm pretty sure it was just the umbilical cord was like around his neck, which is, I mean, I'm not saying it was absolutely preventable, but it's something that could have had medical attention, which there was probably.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that happened to me, but I was saved, you know.
Happened to my son as well. He would have died had it not been for medical intervention. 100%, he would be dead.
I was about 6 years
sorry,
old.
go on, Joshua. Sorry.
I was about 6 years old when I remember the baby kicking. The baby is about to be born, and we went off to a friend's house, friends of my parents, and they of course had the babies at home. There was no hospitals or doctors or anything like that. And when I came back all excited to hold the baby and stuff like that, I was told he had gone to be with Jesus, and what had happened. My understanding now as an adult was he was born breech, and that would have been a fairly routine thing in a hospital. But
this was your sibling?
Yeah, it would have
so
been.
You also lost. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was my brother Joseph Michael. So yeah, within the last 5 years, I'd never been to his gravesite, and so I went to that and visited that, and it was fairly emotional. Like I expected it to be emotional. It was a lot more emotional than I thought. I guess I finally grieved like 5 years ago.
So, Avanah, is your mother still involved with that organization?
Yeah, she's still married to my dad. I'm one of, including the two brothers that I lost, I'm one of 7 children. And after I got kicked out, was shunned from the family and the church. And at this point in my life, I only have a relationship with my sister, who also got out, and not really any relationship with the rest of my family. Every once in a while, like kind of a formal email or something from my mom. But at this point, they are not willing to recognize that there's elephants in the room to work through. And so I don't have the emotional availability to fake a relationship with them anymore.
Good for you.
So
that's the healthiest thing you can do.
I
honestly.
have my
good for
family
you.
now.
Joshua, are you sorry to interrupt you, Van.
Go ahead. No worries.
Joshua, are you is your mother still in that organization? Has she left?
No, all of my family, my immediate family, have left it. They have their own varying degrees of religion, but it's not nearly as harmful or as kind of unconventional as the faith healing cult was.
So how does your mother now feel about not seeking medical attention for that sibling of yours?
I feel like I'm not sure she's ever forgiven herself. I would hate to be in her shoes because, at the time she thought she was doing the right thing. And then kind of once she got out of that whole, repeating whatever it is that keeps you in and actually got yanked out of it, she just can't believe it. And it's, yeah, I mean, she feels awful.
That's heavy.
Yeah, she'll probably never get over it, I guess. Yeah.
Bill, did you have any losses or anything that stands out, something along the same lines for you throughout your experience?
Not in my family, but there was, I can remember there being one woman there who was pregnant, like visibly pregnant and everything. All of a sudden, she had a tubal, a miscarriage, or I'm not sure exactly what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they wound up taking her to the hospital because laying on the hands wasn't working, and so thank God the woman survived. But they were basically kicked out of the church for going to the doctor.
Oh wow!
Wow.
Oh yeah, I have distant family that at one point was a part of the church, and they had twins, and one of the twins was born with a cleft palate and cleft lip, and wasn't feeding well, and they finally brought her to the hospital to get a procedure done, and then they got kicked out of the church.
Damn. Well, they did.
That's heavy. That's heavy stuff.
I remember I was 7 years old, or maybe actually I was a little older than that. But one of my kids, one of my friends, Alex, had died. His parents, and I think this was almost like a sudden heart attack, with like kind of a weird thing for a kid. But I think it was almost sudden, like maybe had they called 911, he wouldn't have made it anyway. Who's to say? Possibly. But anyway, I remember the preacher from the church later talking, like, and even me, I think I was actually 6th grade at the time, picked up that he was talking about how there was a lack of faith, and he was highly implying that the kid Alex is dead because his parents didn't have enough faith. So it's like, it's just, as an adult, it's enraging to think that that's how they treated the people whose kids had died because they tried to do, what the church said.
It's extremely enraging.
The thing about it is, whenever somebody died, of something preventable or whatever, it was always, oh well, they must not have been as strong as a Christian as they needed to be. They didn't have enough faith. But when Freeman died, it was God just called his brother home.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, hypocrisy. Yeah.
Reminds me a lot of Scientology. Mm-hmm. Well, not a lot, but the cultiness of it.
Well, yeah. Do you find actually that Scientology and the Jehovah's Witnesses, that they kind of function like a cult?
Absolutely.
I don't know enough about other cults for whatever reason. I mean, it's funny because I remember like watching my dad debate with Jehovah's Witnesses on our front porch, and like they're the ones that are brainwashing their people, and they need to. It was funny because they didn't know what they were walking into, because they knock from door to door. They think they're the ones in control, and then they would show up at my dad and they had something else coming at them. And
I can only imagine what that conversation was like.
Maybe that's one of the kind of funny, but like I don't know enough about other cults, but it is funny if I'm starting to get to know somebody and it kind of comes up. It always comes up that I grew up in a cult, because I'm so culturally unaware, because I was basically locked in a house for 18 years. So people reference cultural things, I just don't know what they're talking about, or I have weird anxieties about things or whatever it is. So if you get to know me long enough, you're going to find out about the first 18 years of my life. And then when I start to tell someone about it, the first thing they say is, oh, it's like Scientology, or oh, it's like, and they start listing off
trying to associate it.
Yeah, I mean, I
do both Bill and Josh, do you also both now being out, kind of, do you not like using that as an identifier of your past, or how have you worked through that?
Go ahead, Bill.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I just want to know, now that you're out, how have you gotten past kind of letting that define you, or do you think it still does define you? Are you readily able to talk about it? Is it something that you want to talk about, or how do you progress now from that? I guess probably a later question, but it came up because she mention.
Well, that's not a leader question at all. I have no problem calling it a cult. I have no problem talking about it with people. I have, I wear it. I wouldn't say as a badge of honor, but more like a badge of warning for other people. Because I mean, I didn't have any say in what happened, but my parents did. And if it could get, well, they didn't get my dad, but if they can get my mom, then I mean, they can pretty much, get anybody, because we were, we were happy little Baptist family before. Before that, I don't know how. Like I said, I don't know how they wound up going there for the first time. I can't remember that, but
I'm interested.
I don't.
And come back.
I don't.
Don't.
Well, that's hard to do. Neither one of them are with us anymore.
Oh, they're both passed. Okay. Did they pass while in the church or?
No. The satellite group that we were in, the cult that we were in, crumbled after Freeman died, and everybody just went their separate ways and all that stuff. My mom drifted around trying to find something similar or whatever. Ultimately, she wound up finding this pastor of a legit Christian church, and and she wound up marrying him, and he deprogrammed her. So,
good.
My mom and I, we were on good terms when she passed.
Well, that's great.
That's a blessing. Well, I say blessing loosely.
Well, it's good that it had a happy ending. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I actually was also raised Baptist. I don't have any bad experiences from my Baptist upbringing, and also Seventh-day Adventist, but I am now an agnostic atheist.
I kind of had an evolution. Like, at first, I didn't want to tell anyone. I was embarrassed about the cult. And then I wore it like on my sleeve. I would tell everyone inappropriately, like, I meet you, I'd tell you 2 minutes later.
I respect the hell out of that, man. I really do.
So that was, and then I guess now it's like, it's got to be, I might bring it up, but I have to know you quite a while. For me, it's like more like I've had a lot of therapy. I've journaled. I meditate. Like, I feel like now I'm more of a message of hope. Like, hey, we can all get through this,
Oh, that's amazing.
For me, I'm 28, and that was 18 years of my life. That's still more than half of who I am. And it is a really hard thing, because it's like, if you're with a group of people and you're hanging out and whatever, it's like, you don't really know me unless you know that. But that's also like a really big bag of shit to just drop on someone you just met. And then it kind of make you freeze in this anxiety of like, do you just fake it and try to fit in, or do you just be right up front about it? And like, it has taken a lot of therapy to work through that. But I do happily talk about it, because I do think it's a part of my identity. I don't want it to be my whole identity, but I'm glad. Still more of my life was that than it has been out. I've only been out for 10 years. And a lot of that has just been like he said, reprogramming myself. So
this is like, and before we get too much into your afterwards, let's stick. So we know the penalties for, you kind of talked about your penalties for not following in the church's wishes with going to a medical doctor. The women had to dress a certain way. Were people rewarded for conforming to the rules? No. And if so, how?
No. They weren't rewarded for conforming. You were just expected to conform, and that was it. I mean, there was no rewarding. You're doing what God expects of you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The only thing
very authoritative.
Yeah, there's kind of like we were talking about before, this like feeling like you are a part of the inner circle of the holiest of people. So it's just kind of like this feeling of like, I remember like when I got baptized and with the Holy Spirit and became born again, and just like people from the church being like, welcome to God's family. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like the only reward was just like, you finally did it. Good. Like, yeah, it's that.
You're not going to go to hell and die.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, it's like being joined into a sorority or something. Like, now you're cool.
Do you have a baptism date?
I was baptized 3 times.
Okay.
Yep. I was baptized once by my father, and then when I got kicked out, I joined another church, and then they told me that baptism didn't count, and I needed a new one.
I gotta love that, don't you?
And then I joined another church, and then they had to rebaptize me, and then I was like, fuck this, I'm out. And then
there's no church divorce, I guess. You can't divorce.
There's no hope. They all screwed me over, and I don't have any trust anymore.
Okay, so we've mentioned like shunning and excommunicating as a punishment. What punishments did you experience while you were still a member in good standing? If you broke any of the rules, if you watched secular entertainment, which I imagine must have been taboo, but say you did anything, what kind of punishments came your way?
I was spanked.
Depends on who caught you.
What was that?
I said it depends on who caught you.
Okay, elaborate.
That's so
If
true.
if like my mom caught me or whatever, it would just be an ass whipping once we got back home. But if somebody else caught you, like if say somebody saw you walking out of a movie theater, and you had just gone to see Star Wars or something like that, then they would report it, and you'd have to get up in front of everybody and renounce your sin.
So corporal punishment was okay. Just
yeah.
Okay, great. That's fantastic. But don't wear freaking clothes above your knee. But go ahead and beat the shit. Okay.
As a young teenage girl, I stood up in front of my church and apologized and repented to the church for having a crush on a boy.
Oh my God.
Oh man.
It was common to make a kid like go get a switch off of this tree that you're gonna get beaten with. Like that was, you hear that as an old joke or whatever. Like we did that.
I actually did have to do that too. But that was just some country.
I also got spanked until I got spanked up until I was 18.
18.
Oh wow.
What?
That is sick.
And the last spank I got when I was 18 was for something I did when I was 7.
You've got to be kidding me right now.
When I was 7, I was going to get a spank for asking my mom why instead of just being obedient to what she told me to do. I said why, and I was going to get a spank. And I didn't want to get the spank. I was so scared of getting a spank from my dad. I told my dad that I wanted to accept Jesus Christ as my savior. But I was faking it because I just didn't want to get a spank. But then later, years of brainwashing, and my dad keep telling me, you're not behaving like a Christian. I don't think you're really a Christian. This was the whole double baptism thing. I finally told my dad, I was faking it when I was 7. Now I want to become a Christian. And he said, well, to make this right, you need to get the spank that you were supposed to get when you were 7 and lied that you wanted to become a Christian. So then I took that. Yeah.
Well, and one thing that's a commonality in a lot of cults is that not only does the leader become corrupt, but sexual abuse, particularly of underage females, tends to become a problem. Did that happen within this organization?
My understanding is that it ran rampant. I was lucky enough to not personally experience it, but boys and girls, I don't know if there's necessarily more boys or girls, but I think there was a lot, and there are predators that are kind of known to people that were kids my age. And people shared stories and stuff, and I don't think it was necessarily by the leaders, but there's no church board, there's no accountability, so they pretty much had a heyday.
So no one.
I was on a podcast a few months ago, and I talked about a little bit about my experience of being sexually abused. And I can't give too much detail because it would very obviously expose another victim because of how small the church is, and I don't think that victim wants to be exposed. After saying that I was sexually abused within the church, not even after that, after the podcast, I got over 75 messages from people just saying like, oh my gosh, I related so much. At least 20 women that they were sexually abused within the church.
Oh my God.
And I don't expect you
Within
to.
Faith Assembly? Within Assembly?
Yep, within all different satellite churches, people reaching out to me and telling me that they were.
So
you were underage, obviously.
Yeah.
Because you were.
The perpetrators, were they members of the administration, or
No, they were no, because like the administration of the church I grew up in was just my dad. Like he was so it wasn't my father, but.
Do you know, and please don't answer if it's too personal. Do you know if he was aware of it?
I don't think, I never told him. He very much could have been. It was happening right under his nose, but I did tell my people afterwards, and they just completely disregarded it. So
Wow.
And I've heard stories of multiple people where like the same abuser like would just like have his way with like multiple siblings in that family. Like here's a nice catch of a family, and then
so much for modesty, right?
Yeah, exactly. For somebody who's preaching modesty and
stupid show. It's my fault.
Like, how do you answer to a God that you believe in when committing things is that it's crazy, and I understand it is a cult, and it's just that frog in that water, and if I were put in that situation, I can't tell you that I might not have done it, especially being born into it. But now that you're on the outside, to think about how you can justify those actions is just mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And very narcissistic. You hit the nail on the headline, I think, when you said that, because it is a lot of these stories that we hear, and even Morgan and I, when we talk about serial killers, there's a lot of narcissism involved, and just thinking and that you can get away and pushing boundaries, and people allowing you to push those boundaries.
Yeah.
Because people are scared, especially when you've cut them off.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as far as like Faith Assembly versus, say, Children of God, or whatever, or the People's Temple, which of course Jim Jones and all that stuff. I mean, it's pretty tame, but a lot of it is just a matter of how long were they allowed to continue. I mean, Jim Jones, when he started off, he was a really great proponent for equal rights for Black people, and he did a lot of good, and then all of a sudden he just something busted loose in his head, and he just turned into a psychopath. And that, I think that when Freeman died, I think that was probably starting to happen with him, starting to.
Do you think maybe it's best that, what if he would have, maybe it would have gotten worse if he would have survived?
Oh, if I had had a chance to meet him at this age, I would have had words with that man.
And by the way, going back to what you said, Bill, this isn't light at all. This is absolutely horrendous. My heart goes out to you. I admire each and every one of you for being able to talk about it and to help people that are in some other situation, even remotely like this. They have hope. So not light at all. It's equally as bad.
I mean, I was just like, like Jim Jones. I mean, he killed everybody in his temple and everything.
Yeah,
I mean, we weren't to that point, but who knows what would have happened if Freeman had stayed alive. And
but people did die.
Yeah,
this is true. But I just my biggest, I don't know. Maybe I'm trying to sugarcoat it a little bit to where it doesn't seem like it was as bad as it actually was. Maybe that's maybe I'm compartmentalizing or something like that. I don't know, but I mean, yeah, it was bad. Yeah, it was really bad. I mean, you don't really know who, like you go to school, you have to go sit in the library when somebody's having a Christmas party, and don't even think about participating in the Halloween Halloween celebrations in class and all that stuff, because if you do that, you might as well just go to hell.
Were you made fun of by peers because you didn't? Were you ridiculed and made fun of in school? And
yeah, I mean,
another horribly unfortunate situation.
I was homeschooled my whole life, but like in the we went to a homeschool co-op where the people that went to the co-op weren't a part of the cult. So they dressed normally and celebrated holidays and had birthday parties. And I'd have to say no to sleepovers, no to birthday parties, no to Christmas parties, no to Christmas presents, and got made fun of for what I wore. And
Oh yeah.
I went trick.
How did you guys dress? What was your normal dress attire to go to school, or like out in public? What were you, especially I'm sure as a female? What was the dress code?
Avanah, you can take that one first.
Women were expected.
Mine's pretty boring.
Women were expected to wear dresses, well below the knee. One of the things that was really a mental manipulating, confusing situation was like sometimes my sister and I would not wear a dress. We'd wear pants or something. And my mom would like allow it and not like report it to my dad. But then if my dad found out, she also wouldn't stand up for us. Or like speaking, like putting stuff on the car on the way to homeschool co-op and thinking, oh, I'm finally cool, I can fit in. But then if my dad found the makeup, she wouldn't be like, oh, I let her do that. But she also wouldn't say, don't do that. So I think part of her felt bad. And then part of her didn't really have what she needed to have to like stand up and be like, I think it's okay. Or I don't know. Like, I don't really know. We were expected. And most of the time, especially at church, especially at home, sometimes when we went out, we would like twist the rules a little bit. But a skirt or a dress below the knee, like no shoulders showing, like cover your shoulders. Even like don't wear sandals. Sometimes like my dad, like I said, went through phases. He would start like putting on more and more rules. I remember at one time him preaching about wearing bright colors, how it like attracts attention. Okay. He started getting into the colors of what we were wearing. We had to wear head coverings. Like you can't show any like low neckline, no jewelry at all. Don't paint your nails.
I was gonna ask about jewelry.
Don't wear in like braids and anything that like attracts a lot of attention, like a bun or something like that. Like just anything flashy, and my dad would not be okay with it. Yeah.
What about you guys? What about the men? Did you guys have a?
Freeman taught against Notice Me t-shirts. So a t-shirt that had any writing on it was out. Adidas shirts and shoes. Anything with Adidas was homosexuals. Long.
That's the gay friend.
Girls, that was a prostitute purse. These were all, I think, random comments that popped into his head during a sermon, and then like the flag that as like an edict.
Just became law.
Yeah. There's all kinds of those. Bill probably remembers some other ones that I can't remember.
Oh, I was wondering, since you've been out, have you seen the movie The Master, which is about a cult?
I haven't seen that. Have I seen that?
I have not.
Oh, I'd recommend it. I'd recommend it because a lot of what you're talking about happens in the movie. It's fiction, but it's also based on how these things tend to develop. And it sounds like the leader kind of made a lot of things up as he went along, right? He just decided, Adidas is evil. I mean, just these ludicrous beliefs.
Basically, if he or any of the other pastors or whatever came up with something that they didn't like, it was a sin, and all they did was put the two words "spirit of" insert word here, and there's another sin. Like I'm driving barefoot right now, so I have a spirit of driving barefoot.
I love driving barefoot, by the way, Bill. I am so there with you.
Yeah, like if I would be going through a phase of continuing to try to dress in modestly, my dad would be like, let's lay hands on you and rebuke the spirit of needing attention or whatever it was. You know what I mean? Like the devil. So
it's whatever you're doing in succession turns into a sin, essentially.
Yeah. Well, it's like a demon inside you. Demons were everywhere. Like if you had ever taken an aspirin, then you've had the demon of aspirin. You need to go through an exorcism. She said the laying on the hands. They speak in tongues and like to get the demon aspirin out of you.
So you essentially had hands laid on you constantly.
Yeah, sometimes in inappropriate ways.
Being touched. I swear.
Wow.
I'm gonna piss every single one of you off right now.
Do it. You can't piss me off. Go.
I bet. There was this. I'm 48 years old now. There was this kid in my church who was the same age as me, except he had there was something wrong with him. I don't know if it was autism or I don't know. There was something wrong with him, and the guy he did not have the ability to speak words, like real words, and he was at my age, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. Nothing ever changed. And every so often, his mom would trot him up there, and these brethren of the church would lay hands on him, screaming at this demon to release this child. And this kid's scared to death. He's screaming. He doesn't know what's going on. He can't tell anybody what's going on because he's not, he's mentally disabled, nonverbal, and every time. Now, fast forward about 10, 15 years, I, for whatever reason, went to this revival at a big church in my area, and guess who I ran into? That woman and her son were there, and her son, he remembered me. I could tell by the way he kind of looking at me, but he still could not say a word. She had never taken him to a doctor. And here he is, a grown man, basically having to be led around by his mother.
Oh,
wow.
my God, that's
No wonder. Yeah.
heartbreaking.
How much independence is there in a situation like that, you know?
Well,
young-
Torturous. That's torture.
There's so many stories like that too.
Yeah.
So many. I remember one time.
Richie. Same thing at our church.
Yep. So I remember one time, this isn't exactly the same thing, but like my dad would sometimes just have visions and prophecies. Like we'd just be in church singing our worship songs, and all of a sudden my dad would just start yelling this vision or prophecy that the Lord has just given him. And I remember one time he just said, the Lord has shown me that someone in the assembly has like a hurt ankle or something to do with their foot. And like just screaming that like the Lord has anointed him to heal this foot, and like the person needs to step forward. The Lord is like challenging this person to come forward and have faith. And like it was just going on and on forever. And I remember being like, Dad, there's got to be no one here with a hurt foot because no one's coming forward. And finally, like this kid stepped forward, and I think it was just like someone doing something out of peer pressure, you know, and
To just get it to stop. Yeah, okay.
Like someone's just gonna come forward. This kid comes forward and he's like crying and shaking. And I don't think that's the Holy Spirit. I'm pretty sure that's called an anxiety attack. But of course, we're all reading it as the Holy Spirit is coming onto this poor young man who's decided that he's the one with zero faith and a hurt ankle. And my dad, same thing, like laying hands, praying on him, and like, hallelujah, his ankle was healed. And I'm just sitting there like, this is one of my first realizations as a teenager of like, this is not like, no one had a hurt ankle here. We just willed this into happening so we could all feel really like holy. Like this didn't happen.
You're giving something. You're giving purpose for the day because nothing crazy is happening. So let's make something happen.
Yeah. And the poor kid, that must have been traumatizing. He probably convinced himself that his ankle wasn't even hurt.
Speaking of anxiety, so it's no doubt this whole experience out of all those years would have impacted your mental health in a chronic way. So I was wondering, at the time when you still believed in all this, you still believed what they told you, did you live in a constant state of anxiety and fear and depression?
Knowing as much as you could know as a child, I guess.
Yeah, I was, yeah.
I felt guilt all the time. My first grade teacher asked me why I would always close my eyes in class, and it was because I was repenting for thought crime sin that I was afraid I had committed. And I thought if Jesus came back during that time after I committed that thought crime and I had not repented yet, that I would go to hell. So I was in another. I was later diagnosed with childhood PTSD from stuff like that.
You think?
There's a common, yeah. So for me, it was constant. You nailed it, but it was constant. It was like all the time.
All the time. Every night I'd go to bed and I'd be doing a tally in my head of like all the holy things I did and sins I might have done. And like if I die in my sleep, would I go to heaven or hell? And I'd be repenting like all the time and like wondering if like, you know, if I repented and I didn't, I repented again, does that count? Or am I screwed over now for good? Like it was just constantly
nonstop.
Yeah.
It became self-report.
Bill, was it similar for you, Bill?
What now?
Was it similar for you? Did you also have the anxieties of constant like worry that you were or were not doing the right thing, or worrying about what was going to happen next? Or
maybe when I was really young, like you know, from the time we started going there and it started really sinking in until probably around 10 or so, maybe 10 to 12 when I started rebelling. And I'm still rebelling, but the basically I'm in a bad traffic jam right now, but basically they would I'm hands-free, don't worry about it. But I was trying to pull up Google Maps and it wasn't giving me the traffic, you know, it wasn't
You're a
giving me the red line.
multitasking son of a gun, I'll tell you what.
Good thing a cop didn't see me with my tablet in my lap. But but anyway, I started rebelling, and the main reason for that rebellion was I started to listen to the testimonies which they would have in the various, you know, church services and everything. Like people would get up, oh, the Lord did this, the Lord did that, and it's just some of the most ridiculous things that you would ever. It's even at 12 years old, this
Yeah.
woman, she got this is the same woman that had the special needs child.
Okay. Okay.
She got up one day and said, oh, the Lord helped me out big time. I'd come out to my car and it wouldn't start. So I laid hands on the car and I commanded it to start in Jesus' name, and it started. But God told me to drive it right to the auto shop. So I did that. And the mechanic opened the hood, and he just looked at me with this crazy look in his eye. And the battery had been stolen. And everybody's just like, oh, hallelujah, praise God. And I'm sitting there going, what a crap.
Bullshit.
Yeah.
That segues into. No, go ahead. I'm finish.
Oh, I could come up. The reason I remember this one so vividly is because I got a reaming for it by having the audacity to question the validity of the statement. But I'm sure that I've got more that I could share, and I'm sure it's Josh and Avanah do too.
Yeah, I'm sure they did.
So many.
I want to know, when was your final break? What was it that happened? When did you leave and split? What was your final straw?
Me?
I want to hear from all of you. Go, okay. Bill, if you're ready.
Yeah, Bill had it. Yeah. Yeah, Bill, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, mine was basically when Freeman died, the whole thing fell apart. You would think that the Pope had died or something like that. By the way, everybody was all crying when the news was broken to everybody, and basically my mom, like I said earlier, she was lost. She didn't know what to do, and she was just trying to find another church, and she was trying to get me to go along with to some of these churches with her. And I think I was like maybe 13, 14 at the time, and I just basically said no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not. I said I'm done. I mean, I'm done going to these crazy churches. You want me to go to a church? Find a good one.
Yeah.
And ultimately I wound up moving in with my dad when I had turned 15. But my sister, she stayed with my mom, and she went to a couple of those churches with her, but ultimately she kind of bowed out as well. My sister doesn't have the memories. She's 3 years younger than me, so she doesn't really have the memories like I do. But she remembers some. I mean, we haven't really talked about it, but I mean, I basically
you were questioning it rather young, and I please don't judge me for asking this, but what are each of your signs, your zodiac signs, even though that means nothing to you?
But that would have been considered sinful by this organization.
I know.
Actually, you take a guess as to mine. If you're into it, you probably know which one I am.
Gemini?
No, I don't think a Gemini. No, I'm feeling a Leo.
Close.
Maybe a Taurus.
Virgo.
Oh, Virgo. Okay.
Well, yeah, that makes sense, because eventually Virgo's going to figure out what's really going on. They're in touch with reality. So.
Yep.
So were there people?
I'm not like really into astrology, but
no, you don't need to be. It's more for Morgan and I. Sorry, I was being a little selfish in that.
Well,
no,
I do
it's
think
all
that
about you.
I do think that a lot of the write-ups, describing the traits of people with various signs, I do think that there's something to that, because a lot of the description about Virgos pretty much describes me to a T. But that's about as far as I go with it.
No worries.
Oh, okay.
I was just you sound like you were for being that young to question stuff around you is pretty. I mean, I don't know if I did. It took me a long time. I mean, to question my religion, I was into my 20s.
So how long did it take after you left the organization to get to the point where they were no longer in your head, where you would think like, oh, I can go and see a movie if I want, I'm not a bad person. Like how long did it take you to get there?
I was still scared of hell until into my 30s.
Wow.
And even though intellectually I didn't believe it, I still had that kind of innate, ingrained
Mhm.
fear. So I think probably at least into my early 30s before that was completely washed away. And
That
then
was
I
that was
carried guilt.
indoctrinated into, yeah.
Yeah, and I carried guilt after that, but we're still working on that. So
Aw. And what was your Josh? What was your kind of
breaking point.
yeah,
I was kind of lucky.
camel on the straw on the camel?
Yeah, my dad was a number 2 in the satellite church in Indianapolis, and he got in an argument with the number 1 over a doctrinal dispute whether or not this guy named Paul Cain was a prophet or not. My dad said yes, the other guy said no. It turned out that that guy, I guess, later was found to be in the closet or something, and so like I don't know, that would have been a whole other scandal. But anyway, we got kicked out of the church, and so slowly but surely started to normalize. And it like. Then we got a TV, was a big day. First a VCR, then a TV, and then then cable. Although he still blocked MTV because that was of the devil. But
Wow.
yeah, so it was just.
And how old were you when that happened?
I was sometime in high school. I want to say 15
Okay.
or 16. Maybe even 17. I'm not.
What a fucking intense time of your life to go from a cult to like, oh, here's modern reality.
Yeah.
That had to be a mind fucked in and of itself.
Yeah, and I had acne. So.
Oh my, gee, I mean, for the love of God, we're all going through it. That's just adding to the
around 13,
trauma.
Around 13 or so, I started actually I started before that. I started listening to heavy metal music, and I was hiding it. I was hiding it. I was hiding it at first, but around 13 or 14 or so, I started just basically not hiding it anymore. And my mom was convinced that I was had sold my soul to the devil because I had known how to play guitar since I was like maybe 6 or 7, but I was starting to get into those minor chords, those devil music and stuff like that, and I just started doing it. But then when I had moved in with my dad, I was actually allowed to start growing my hair out. I was allowed to
like Jesus.
That's awesome.
No, like Bruce Dickinson.
Yes.
But
Love
but
it.
I was able to, but I had gotten with this group of kids at the new school that I was in, and they were metalheads as well, and they were putting together this little band. Turns out it was a Christian band.
Oh, shit.
And but the first band that I was ever in was actually a Christian band, and we played. I played probably, that band was together for 3 years. I probably played about 100 shows with them.
Wow.
And it was crazy because I had never stopped believing in God. I just I thought that this church that I was in was a ridiculous pile of crap.
Right.
And and I wound up going to another church with these groups of people and everything, and I stuck with it for a long time, and then I had to I started adulting. And
yeah, well, that's where it all goes downhill from there. Yeah.
So Avanah, what was your I want to know Avanah's.
Oh yeah, what was your breaking point?
Her breaking point, yeah.
So when I started getting into my teens was when I kind of started living a double life, as my dad called it, which I was doing. Like I said, I started, leave the house, put makeup on, come home, don't. I also secretively listened to music. I had like a little pocket radio hidden in my pillow. I'd listen to that. I think he found that one time. I remember he found a ring one time of mine and put it on the floor and stepped on it in front of me. But I started living this double life. I started questioning my dad more.
And what's your sign?
I'm a Pisces.
Pisces.
Yeah.
Sadly, that's one sign that can be easily brainwashed. So,
yeah. I'm also a musician. I started writing a lot of music. I remember getting in trouble for some of the music I was writing.
And Joshua, you play guitar too, right? I saw a guitar.
Way badly than these two. Way worse.
That's interesting. You guys all have music, but no, okay. So you did that.
I got actually banned instruments from the church because I don't know. I guess we were getting too into it and it was becoming about us and not God or something. But anyway.
The organ.
Anyway, I was challenging my dad more. And the night I got kicked out, my dad was mad about who knows what. He would go into like silent treatment phases where he wouldn't really he would just kind of hibernate in his study and not really talk to the family. And you'd all know someone was going to be in trouble within the next few days. You didn't really know who, but someone was about.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, he was such an emotionally abusive person to live with. It was terrifying. I was just scared of him all the time.
So you guys were anticipating then for those 3 days who was going to.
Oh, my mom would coach my sister and I in how to communicate with my father. Like, she would literally tell us like how to know if he's in a good mood and when to approach him. And she literally, like, we all had to learn what eggshells to walk on around him. Like, it
This
was
is fucking batshit.
yeah, and that's like just besides the whole church stuff, just living with, like I said, a narcissistic person. Like,
Right.
that's terrible. And that's why I then dated narcissistic people. But anyway, he was, I don't know, a lot of it is still a little foggy because trauma, but he was upset. And then I remember him kind of going on a rampage and about how he's just trying to lead a godly family and we're making it hard for him. And I remember him saying like, and you to me, he was like, I remember him looking at me like, you make it so difficult for me to raise a godly family. And something with me saying to him like, he's like, I was like, well, I just don't agree with a lot of the things that you like want us to do. Like, you need to show me verses in the Bible that like back up some of it, because it was getting to the point where I'm like, you can't even find this in the Bible. So
yeah, you're questioning it. You're using rational thought.
Or there's multiple ways to translate this. So can we at least have a discussion? And then, I remember he called me a wimp, and that really hurt me because he's like, well, you're a wimp. You won't even like come to me and talk to me about it. And I was like, Dad, I'm scared to talk to you. I'm like, I've talked to you, and I walk away feeling like I've been slapped in the face 100 times for even trying to talk to you. And then he was like, well, then let's have a conversation right now. We'll talk right now. And of course, everything has to be public. The amount of times I got in trouble and the entire family had to come into the living room.
Humiliating.
Insane. Yeah. So we had to have a family, everyone come to the kitchen, called my brother, come home from work. Like, everyone come home, where Avanah and I are going to hash it out. And at the time, my little brother had an ankle swollen the size of a softball. He was hurt.
Oh.
He had not gotten any medical attention. I had asked him privately if he wished that he could get medical attention, and he was kind of like, yeah, I think I kind of maybe would. And I remember saying to my dad, I almost said his name. My brother is 12 years old. He's perfectly capable of deciding if he wants to see a doctor or not. Yeah. Why can't he make that decision? And then my dad was like, if God was in the room, would you take him to a hospital or would you take him to God? And I was like, well, God is not in the room. And if your faith is so strong that you believe God is in the room, that's fine. I also believe that God will meet you where you're at. And maybe my faith isn't there and yours is. But maybe my faith needs to go to a hospital where there's humans that God created that can help me. Okay. And
such smart thinking.
And I remember him being like, well, what else? And I was like, in Massachusetts, they had just passed the mandatory health insurance law. And my dad had just given a teaching on do not get health insurance, even though the government is telling you to get health insurance. Do not get health insurance. And I remember saying to my dad, and this is what pissed him off, I said, you tell us to respect our elders, and the Bible says that the government is your elder, and you do not respect your elder, and you are a hypocrite. That was it. He was done.
Good job.
He called me Judas, told me that I pretended to love him and I was just waiting to betray our family. And looking back, I should have been like, so if I'm Judas, you're Jesus? Like, he literally Judas. And then I know you don't want to live here anymore. I had just turned 18. This was 5 days after I turned 18. And I had been telling my parents, I want to move out. I didn't want to get kicked out. I wanted to move out. I wanted to still have a relationship with them, just kind of start my own life. He was like, I know you don't want to live here. You need to get out of the house. And I was like, I don't want to leave right now, Dad. Like, I'm going to move out, but I don't want to leave right now. And he's like, no, you need to get out of the house right now. And I was like, can we plan it? Like, where am I? Get out of my house. I was like, can I just get some stuff? Get out of the house. Can I put my shoes on? Open the door, push me out. I was barefoot. Get out of the house. And I was out of the house and never went back.
That's it?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Holy crap.
Talking about, like having the an injury and not having not going to the doctor for it. I mean,
Yes.
I broke my ankle as a kid, my left ankle, and I mean, it wasn't like a serious break or anything like that. It was probably just a hairline fracture or whatever. But I wasn't taken to the doctor. To this day, I still walk with a slight limp, and I have no cartilage in my left ankle because
Yeah, absolutely.
bone on
Must be
bone.
really painful.
I also have
How old were you when that happened?
like 6 or 7. I
Oh,
remember.
that's when you're growing the most.
Right.
If you don't get something set, you're screwed.
But I remember when that happened. One thing I don't remember happening was, when I finally got my hair, after my hair was like really long, and I decided to get it cut short, after I realized that it's like wearing a wool cap in the summertime, so screw it. The barber, he's got the clippers on the side of my head, finds this scar that's like 2 inches long and about a quarter inch thick on the side of my head.
Wow.
And he's like, what happened here? I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you got a scar? I'm like, really? I do? What? So he puts the mirror up, and I look at it. I'm like, I have no idea what happened. He was like, that's a pretty nasty scar. So my mom and my dad were still alive at the time. Neither one of them could remember exactly. My dad said something about remembering me, taking a spill and getting a bump on my head as a kid, but couldn't.
As a kid, how old? Do you know? Did he say?
He couldn't remember. My mom, of course, had no memory of it either.
Bullshit.
But yeah, that scar is still there. So apparently, yeah.
You had to have had a pretty serious injury to leave a scar like that, especially as a toddler.
I have a scar on my arm that's barely visible. That was like from a cut I got when I was messing around, and it was there for like 30 years. It's finally faded to where only I can see it now.
Wow.
But this one still looks, it's still bright as day. I mean, it sticks up over the skin. That's how big of a scar it is.
And considering that all this happened when you were so young and those are formative years, I'm interested in knowing how much it has lingered in terms of like having post-traumatic stress disorder or something like that. So I'll start with Avanah. I mean, you suffered every kind of abuse, including sexual abuse. So does this plague you still? Does it haunt you, or have you dealt with it?
I mean, yes, it's haunts me every once in a while. Haunts me every once in a while, where I'll just stop in my tracks because something triggers me in such a frightful way that I wasn't expecting. It affects me every single day.
Oh yeah.
Every single moment of every day sometimes. I've gone through so much therapy that it doesn't, like you said, haunt me all the time. Like I'm kind of aware. I know what things trigger me. Like my fiance knows what things trigger me emotionally, sexually, physically. I talk with him. Like the people that are closest in my life, they know as well. And I'm a fairly self-aware person because I've had to be to survive. But it every day, to this day, 10 years later, every single time I get dressed and look in the mirror, I think about what my dad would say about my outfit.
Oh my God.
Oh, well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Because most girls just like putting a cute outfit on,
Oh, honey.
Do you have any children?
Yeah, I have a 5-year-old son.
So how do you feel about how you were raised now that you have a child of your own?
Yes.
Yeah, I feel two things. I made a pact with myself and my sister. We decided the trauma ends with our generation. Like there's no choice. The trauma ends. My son does not have a relationship with any of my family. He will not. I will not allow it to seep into. He will not have 2 sets of grandchildren, but his children will have a healthy grandparent and give it 3 more generations, and hopefully it'll just be something that happened in our family history. Like that's what we've decided, and I do everything in my power to be a nurturing, loving mom. And I've learned how to reparent myself through parenting him, which has been very therapeutic. And being a mom all on my own and having to do everything by teaching myself how to do it because I didn't learn how to do it from my parents has been like really empowering. Like it's the one thing that I feel very, very confident in because I was so criticized every other part of my life. Like 100 people could say you're a shitty mom and I'd be like, fuck you, no, I'm not. Because
Exactly.
I know that I'm like beating all the odds. And my child is smart and happy and healthy and self-aware, and he asks about everything in life, and I let him explore everything in life, and I encourage him to be himself, and like I continually go to therapy so that I don't let any of the trauma seep into his life, or as little as possible. So it definitely affects how I parent, but hopefully in a good way, because I try to be intentional about it.
Well, I think you're an incredibly
That's
strong,
amazing.
despite all that's happened. I think you're holding up really well. There are a lot of people who would not be doing as well as you are. I want to commend you for that.
Thank
I
you.
do
So
too.
Joshua,
Yeah, I want to know about Josh too.
do you
How
have
it's
any
affecting.
children, Joshua?
I don't. I'm the only one of my siblings that does not. So I have tons of nieces and nephews, but none myself.
That's totally okay, by the way.
Yeah, I think it is totally.
We can normalize not having children if you
I have a
don't,
rule
but has
about
it affected your
children, so.
relationships with people in your how has it affected you now? Is it still affecting you?
I think I started to deal with it professionally like 4 years ago through therapy and stuff like that, and it has been night and day. It's been a huge weight off my shoulders. And I did this stuff called brain spotting, and it kind of gave me a new level of awareness where I didn't even realize stuff that was triggering me and stuff constantly. And now, just with that and journaling and meditation, I feel like I'm way, way more aware. And yeah, it still does affect me. But I feel like it's more like a blip every now and then rather than a crushing weight on my shoulders, which it was
Constant.
for 70
Well,
years.
that's great. I'm glad that's happened. Bill, how about you? Do you have any children?
Yeah, I have a 25-year-old daughter and an 11-year-old daughter.
And how did becoming a parent, did it alter your perspective on your youth growing up in that organization?
Yeah, my 25-year-old daughter had a pretty shitty childhood, and all that was because I didn't really know how to. Avanah had said that she was wound up dating narcissistic people and stuff like that, and I kind of found when I was younger, I kind of found myself in the same situation with the mother of my 25-year-old. I mean, just an evil person and everything. I mean, I'm not even going to get into anything. We split up. I wound up with custody. I fought for custody. I wound up with temporary custody. I fought for custody. I fought till every last penny that I had been drained, and then my attorney dropped me like a bad habit. So she wound up going through foster care, and she also at one point wound up with my mother. And so I've done everything I could to try and make it up to her and whatnot, but she she's still got a lot of resentment toward me and everything for not being able to hold it together, and for some pretty bad things happened to her while she was in foster care. My 11-year-old is starting to ask questions. She's kind of found out that I was part of a cult. She's asking me. She's asking me about about God. Is God real? Is God what's up? Asking questions about the cult, my my family and all that stuff. And I'm also going through a divorce with her mother. So,
How are you handling the questions with her? Are you being? I mean, I am a mother of two boys, and I find it best to be honest. So
I'm okay with them. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to her.
right.
And she's nearing that age, because at like 12 or 13, a kid can decide, what parent they want to live with.
Yeah.
And she's starting to ask me questions about, about, well, where she would want to live, because she's well aware that about another year and a half she's going to be able to make that decision should she choose to. And and I'm not trying to steer her one way or the other. Do I think that she'd be better off with me and my fiance? Yes, I do. But I'm not going to try and steer her one way or another, because that's something that somebody in a cult would do.
Exactly. You're doing the best thing you can. Honestly, it's just being honest, open, and real. I commend all of you.
Yes.
Like, to the utmost. I can't even tell you how strong you may not feel, but I think that you are, for being the people that you are right now. And taking that and growing from it is very inspiring. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I'm blown away. I have like goosebumps, and I'm very emotional because that's just who I am. So
let's take it to a positive direction for a moment.
Yeah.
Any of you had a positive spiritual experience since you left, where you thought, this is the way it's supposed to be? It's supposed to be about love and connection with other people. It's not about shame and punishment
or are you religious at all anymore? Which is another question.
Any of you,
I am not religious at all, but the positive and almost religious-like experience, I mean, tripping on acid in college, like, that was just one with everyone. And
thank you, Josh, for bringing. Thank you. I needed that really bad.
Like, it's kind of funny, but like, that's how I felt at the time, and I feel like that affected me in a positive way. And come to find out, psychedelics actually do some mental work or whatever in a positive way. Maybe I got some of that. So
microdosing is a thing, my friend. Yes.
How about
afraid to try that? I think they would. I think if I tripped on acid, it would wind up doing something seriously wrong.
Yeah, don't do that. Just microdose, buddy. Bill, don't do that. Don't go in blind.
I just drink beer. That's it. That's all I do.
Perfect.
Bill, have you healed? Have you done therapy? Have you
I've never done therapy. I've never done therapy. I'm not trying to say that I handled things better than anybody else did. I'm just saying I personally didn't go through therapy over it. Once I started living with my dad, I kind of started realizing, once I started like really finding out who I was, and I went through some really rough times with my personality as a teenager and a young adult, not knowing who I was. I was scared of everything that moved and all that stuff. And, and I just basically, I recognized that this wasn't right. And it wasn't just like an awakening, like, oh my God, this isn't right. It was, I'd think about something that I had done a year or two or three in the past, and I'd be like, that was stupid.
Yeah.
Don't ever do that
a gradual realization, maybe.
Yeah. And now I told I've been comfortable with the person that I am for like almost 20 years.
Yeah.
And but everybody processes things differently, and but yes. Well, I
definitely recommend therapy to everyone, literally everyone. I mean, literally every single human being in the world. But
I mean, it probably would have done me some good, but
yeah,
I probably would have gotten there sooner if I had gone to therapy. But I mean, I'm not knocking therapy at all.
Yeah, no, I know you're not, but yeah, because it's definitely helpful. So
yeah, and I just think that if okay,
no, you're fine.
You're fine. For a minute. You had asked if we're still religious. I mean, I do. Yeah. I believe in God.
Okay.
I do. And if I found the right church to go to, I'd probably start going again. But I've set the standard pretty high for what a good what I would consider a good church.
What is acceptable?
Like years ago, I was going through a particular rough spot. So it's like when people are in rough spots, they tend to reach out and try and start going to church again if they weren't going. And I hadn't been in years, so I start going to church, and like the first church that I went to, they were meeting in a school cafeteria on Sundays. I don't know how they did it, but whatever. And every sermon was I went there for about a month, and every sermon was, we got to grow the church. We got to grow the church. And that's all it was about. Like, okay,
exactly.
Come on. Yeah. Another one that I went to, and I'm thinking this one has cult written all over it. I go there. I was in a bar one night, and I started, this man and woman started like talking to me and everything. Turned out they were from this church, and like, oh, it's just a regular church and everything. And I'm like, okay, at the time I hadn't really started researching churches or anything like that, but if it's kind of similar to what Church of God, the Children of God did, by sending people out into the bars, recruiting and telling them all that. Now, it wasn't anything like that, but just their method of recruitment kind of was. I mean, the woman, she looked good, and she was dressed kind of provocatively, like somebody who was out at a bar on a Friday night would be, and so there might have been a little element of that. I only went to one service because as soon as I got there, everybody's walking up to me. And apparently they had rounded up 2 other people in the week leading up to that and everything, and we were like kind of group, like they had us sit together. I'm like, okay, this is weird.
Yeah, and all of that would immediately turn.
It was, the warning bells were going off, but it gets better. So as soon as the pastor comes out, he just starts going off on these people, on this couple that they had just kicked out of the church, like bad mouthing them, like not cussing, but might as well have been cussing. And I'm like thinking, it's like, you couldn't have a private meeting with somebody? I'm brand new. Do I need to hear this?
Well, isn't God love? God is love. That's what I was.
Like now I'm looking at it, it's like, okay, if you're trying to be a cult leader, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, you're doing it way wrong, dude. Let me get up there and show you.
But so
no,
then
that's bad.
These people, they take us out for lunch, and they're like, so what did you think about it? And I went last. The other two people were like, oh, I liked it, blah 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 blah. And so what did you think, Bill? I said, what am I supposed to think? I said, your preacher just.
Did they pull out like a book
I had no idea. I don't know who these people are. I don't know what the backstory is. All I'm thinking about is that could be me.
Yeah.
That could be me that he's screaming and ranting.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm like, I won't be going back.
Well, that's good.
So this next
you can
question.
Find all the religion you need outside under a tree, because that's nature. And if God exists, then it's in that sunset, and it's in a tree, and it's on the ground.
I agree with that. I've been in just about every state in the country. I definitely agree that God is in me.
Absolutely. That's where I feel most open.
My next question.
Sorry, Morgan.
Sorry. My next question, I'm going to pose it to all 3 of you, starting with Avanah. So, if you could get your father's ear for a few minutes and tell him everything you feel about those experiences and the way it's impacted your life, what would you? And you were just going to dish it out raw. What would you say to him?
If anything at all.
Damn. My heart literally just like my body just physically responded to that. I don't know, because I've tried so many times. Like I could pull up in the last 10 years, the first 5 of them, I fought really hard, and there were so many emails, and it's just talking to him. I feel like it would have been the same way talking with Hobart Freeman too, just from like the way his teachings are. It's just.
Let's say he's listening to you, he's open to you, you have a few minutes, and he's going to absorb it all. What would you think would make an impact for the person that you know as your father? If anything. Or to make you feel better.
I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind, if I was going to tell him something that he would actually take seriously, which is not ever going to happen. I would be like, Dad, you are destroying lives. You're killing people. You're preventing people from being able to exist how they are. Stop.
Yeah.
I would just beg him. I would beg him to stop. I would beg him because there's still people in his church. There's still children there. Like, it's so unfair. It's so unfair.
It's tragic.
Yeah.
Tragic.
And those, like I said, like, we have, I'm not exactly sure how old Josh is, but like, we have 3 different levels of ages here. And then there's children there that are younger than me, and then they're going to have children. And it's just like, this is a generational problem. And there are still churches out there, and there are still people that believe in this. And like, it's so toxic. It's literally destroying lives. And it's like, not okay at all. And if God's real, like, you are preventing us from seeing who he really is, because he's turned himself into God, So, and I would tell him to go to see a therapist because he needs help.
Amen, sister.
Yeah.
Help.com.
But I imagine being so indoctrinated into all that it probably wouldn't make a difference, right? He's probably
because talking to him it is such a mind twist. It is such a fog. You walk in there and then you question everything. Like, it's like walking into a room that's just slowly filled with fog, and to the point where
that's a true narcissistic
fog. Like, it's an absolute. It's like when you see a woman. It's an abusive relationship. It's like when you see a woman start to talk to her ex again. You're like, oh shit, she's gonna go back, and then she's gonna think that he's God himself. Give her a couple years and she'll be back on the other side, and it's like he'll be a monster again. Like, it's so manipulative. When I got kicked out of my house, I ran to a neighbor's house who actually knew not the extent of everything going on in my life, because if I had told her the extent, I'm sure she would have called the police or something. But she knew that I wasn't happy at home, and my dad was very religious. The first thing I did is I said, get me a piece of pen and paper, and I made a list of all the reasons why I cannot go back home. And for years, I was so scared that my father would be able to convince me to come back home. But I knew in that headspace, I can't go back home. I can't do it. But I also knew I'm capable of being convinced to go back home. And that's a really scary place to be. Yeah. And I remember telling my neighbor, I said, I don't care if you have to chain me to a wall. Do not let me go home and make me read this piece of paper, and don't let him convince me to come home. Don't let him do it. And he did try to, but I didn't.
Good for you. Good for you.
Like, it's such a... I wish I could talk to all the people in the church, but rather than him, honestly.
Is there any support for people like you guys, that anybody that was questioning could reach out to, like, that you're willing to speak of? Or
I have not ever seen a therapist that, like, I've had a couple of therapists, some better than others. They've all struggled a lot with helping specifically, like, cult trauma, if that makes sense. Like, there's
I don't think I've ever seen anybody specializing in that kind of.
I know of one woman, but I couldn't afford her, and she didn't accept. She's out in California, and I exchanged some emails with her. I don't remember her name, and it just seemed like the most wonderful thing. I wanted to do it so badly, but the healthcare system doesn't
shit.
Work for victims.
It's absolute shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So that worked out. Every therapist I've had has had a really hard time with the cult side of it, just because even like a therapist that maybe specializes in religious abuse, I think would be more helpful. But it's like, there's abuse, there's emotional abuse, there's physical or sexual abuse, but then there's this abuse that is like in this God form. Wow. So there's questioning you deserve to be treated a certain way by like a human or something, but then there's like questioning the validity of your existence. You know what I mean?
That's like, such a good point. I've never thought about
internally to a completely different level. Like, wow. So it's a really hard thing to like overcome.
Yes. That's a really, really very good point. I don't believe I've ever heard of anybody specializing in that kind of therapeutic trauma. Have you, Josh, like, what was your what was the original question, Morgan, you asked?
Well, I know he went to therapy, but Josh, have you ever sat
what would you say?
Your parents and
so I don't know how I put it into words, but I think I would try to express to my dad the extent of the emotional damage that he did to his 6 kids. and also not only that, but to like, because he was a preacher, so like the extent of the damage that he did to other families and other kids, and in some cases those kids are passing that down to their kids and his own grandkids and all the just I don't know. I feel like he's not aware, and I would somehow try to make him aware of that. And I don't even know if it'd serve any purpose other than make me feel better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess so. How about you, Bill? What would you say to your parents about that time in your life?
It's not my parents. It's just my mom, because my
Right.
dad just stuck around. But my dad hated it.
Yeah.
But it's just my mom, and I've pretty much said everything that my mom and I duked it out for years over this, and basically my stepfather, both of my parents are gone, but I'm still in regular contact with my stepfather, and I even played guitar at their wedding.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But me and my mom things weren't really all that great between us at that time. I think I was like 20 when they got married, and so basically a lot happened, a lot changed. We went from being in the cult to like 6-7 years later marrying a third husband after divorcing my dad. And at the time, I might have had I think we even had a discussion about that. Like, not like my dad would have taken her back anyway, but still, we went back and forth for years, and then my stepfather was able to be a mediator between the two of us. And like I said, he deprogrammed her, because he's a non-denominational minister as well.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Up in Tennessee, Bible Belt Church and everything. It's non-denominational, and really, really good guy. And he was able to mediate between the two of us and everything. And like I said, at the time, when she passed away, me and my mom had been on good terms for probably about 5 or 6 years.
Good.
And was that one practice that happens in a lot of cults is that young girls, sometimes under 18, they're married, they're paired up with a man, and they start having children. Did that happen in this cult at all?
Was young marriage acceptable or pressured?
Like I remember.
I'm assuming there was no sex before marriage. Assuming.
It wasn't supposed to be, but
yeah,
except for molestation.
Except for molestation, correct?
Right. Basically, I was raised to be a wife. You know what I mean? I wasn't allowed to go to college, or I remember being like 16, 17, and my mom, she sews. Like, my dad's a carpenter. My mom sewed and homeschooled. That was her side job. Like, she was a very good seamstress. And I would be helping her, with pillows and ironing and stuff, and just be like, Mom, like, what is my life going to be? And it's like, you can sew with me and you'll get married. And I remember my dad one time, like, preaching and talking about how, like, he would not, I remember being so scared too, he would not give his daughter away to someone that he didn't approve of. He would not walk his daughter down the aisle to someone they did not approve of. I remember sitting in church and being well, my dad is not going to be walking me down the aisle, because anyone that he approves of, I am not going to marry. Like, that was like kind of, for me, I remember realizing, like, yeah, this is all going to end at some point, because we're not on the same page here. And I do remember, like, when I was in 16 or 17, we all went to go live with, like, another family down in Alabama who also was like a satellite church. They were even, like, more extreme, and we stayed with them for a while. And they had a son that was like my age. And I just remember, like, I'm not saying it was an arranged marriage in any way at all. I'm just saying it was, like, definitely.
You're maybe feeling some.
Yeah, I was like, all right, this is, like, because there was one other boy in my dad's church. And I just remember being like, so if I'm being raised to be a wife, basically, like, that's my future, is just to be a submitful wife to some man.
Right.
But there's 14 people in your church, and everyone else is a sinner.
Yeah.
Is this guy going to come? Is going to fall from the sky? Like, are you going to make him yourself? Like, what's the plan here? You know what I mean?
Take your rib.
Right. Exactly.
Sorry, that was a bad religious joke.
It's okay. No, but like, yeah. I mean, I don't remember like specifically arranged marriages. Definitely, they had to be approved.
I mean, that's kind of the
That was
kind of
definitely
the same.
like my future was just to, that's kind of why I've been married before. I got married and had a kid really young because I was like what I knew how to do, and I just wanted to feel confident in something. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, in my experience, our satellite probably hadn't been around for very long, and they would they preached that unless you were part of that church,
yeah,
you were a sinner. So basically, it was implied that that it had to be somebody in the church, within the church. Now, I can only remember one wedding in the entire time that I was there, and it was these two 18, 19-year-olds or whatever, and they got married. As far as I know, they're still together. But that was it. That's the only wedding that I can recall that happened between two members of the church.
Yeah.
Now, there like Avanah was saying, there's 14 people in the church. Well, ours was a little bit bigger than that, but there might have been like 30 or 40, and a fairly even number of girls and boys the same age. So if it had gone on for a couple more years, they might have been like trying to nudge us towards each other.
Yeah,
definitely.
Almost incestual.
Yeah.
That leads me to maybe close to one of my last questions. I want to ask you guys, going through this experience, being where you are now, again, just incredible how strong you seem. And I know you fight demons. I'm sure you do every day. And we all do in certain ways, but this is heavy, really heavy. And I just want to ask you, what if somebody were listening, or somebody's family member were listening that was in this situation as a moldable youth, what advice could you possibly give to them, or what would you say to them to give them hope, or to possibly have them step that extra step if they were questioning where they were to leave or get out? What is after that?
Take it, Josh.
I guess that there's hope. I'm not gonna say it's easy, but it does get better. I today am so just so free compared to how I used to be, like, and just condemnation and guilt and all that stuff. It can get better, and it will get better, if you just try.
And
Thank you, Josh.
When you all left and immersed yourself in the real world, I mean, it's almost in a sense like you had a second childhood, because it was a whole new phase of discovery. Was it stressful learning about how things really were outside of that world? I'll start with you, Avanah.
Yes, it like still is. Like,
I can imagine.
Especially raising a child, you know what I mean? Like, it's funny because like some people are like, oh, well, now I get to experience all these firsts with him, and I'm like, yeah, but like,
I don't know what it is.
Always a way to be positive about something, and that's a good tool to have, but sometimes it feels really good to just feel really bad for yourself, and that's okay,
Sure,
yes, yeah. It is. Yes, it is.
Self-compassion, yeah.
Right, and which is something we were not taught to have as well. So, it's like,
it's okay to cry, it's okay to feel bad, it's okay to have a bad day, it's okay to not feel perfect.
Right, but it's
we're not.
Coming to this realization over the last 10 years of like, I'm first out on my own, and there's the whole shock of all that, and like the trend, it's a lot of like just physical day-to-day things, figuring it out, emotional crap going on, but like kind of come to this realization, like, oh, I can be normal now. Like, let's go buy a pair of jeans and a low-cut shirt and some makeup.
Adidas.
Adidas, yeah.
Like, like fairy tale story of like, you know, this girl goes to the mall for the first time and becomes normal and has this like transformation and feels like it. But then you realize that it's like you're still not normal because it's not normal for that to not be normal. You know what I mean? Like it's just
Yeah.
and realizing like, you know, I can go watch a movie now, but I can't go back and watch Cinderella at 5. I'm watching
Right.
Cinderella at 25.
Right.
And I look at it as a 25-year-old, but also as a first time watching it year-old. And I'm never going to be normal. I'm never, ever going to be normal because I can't go relive it. And it's like, that was the one thing that we craved, or at least myself, my entire childhood. Like, I just wanted to fit in. Like, and I know that that's a normal teenager
No,
thing.
that is.
Yeah.
It's a very normal thing to go through, but like, all I wanted was to just feel like a cool girl. Like I just wanted to be cool. Like, and it seems simple, but it's really not. That is so much.
Something so simple
Right.
is so grand as
Right.
a child, though.
And now it's like I've had to learn how to allow myself to have those feelings, but as an adult. And like I remember talking about this with my therapist, where it's like, when I have the anxiety / excitement of like going up to the bar and ordering a drink for myself, I'm allowing myself to have that experience of like when your mom drops you off at the mall for the first time at 12 years old and you're like independent and you figure something out for yourself. But like I'm 28 and I'm doing that. You know what I mean? It's like a very emotion. It's a lot going on there. And if you allow yourself to like be introspective about it, there's a lot of healing that really needs to be done. So it's constantly an adjustment.
Sure. How about you, Joshua? Was it hard for you to adjust to the outside world?
I had that 20-year culture gap, you know, like where just stuff's just missing. So that'll always be there. Like you talk about whatever movie was on the 80s, I won't know, or a Ghostbusters joke or something. I'm not gonna get it.
We're talking about half the time.
Guys,
Yeah.
this is just mind blowing to me.
But I mean, I feel like, you know, I've normalized to the extent I can, and I don't think I'm gonna get any more normal than this. So it's as good as it
You
gets.
can always progress and evolve, man. You're killing it right now.
Yeah,
for what you've been through.
like that gap is gonna be there. I don't care to go watch all the 80s movies with the
Yeah, don't. Most of it's shit.
Well,
they weren't all.
I think that I probably had the easiest time with it out of the three of us, because I mean the whole time, you know, it's like I started rebelling. I mean, I saw, before we got into that church, I saw the first Star Wars movie in the theater, and I loved it. You know, and I had a whole bunch of action figures and stuff like that. I was made to throw them away.
You were fighting the system early, Bill.
Yeah,
you were really a rebel.
So I saw the Empire Strikes Back in the theater. I saw Return of the Jedi in the theater. I saw Ghostbusters in the theater, because I had friends that my mom didn't know about, and they would take me to see these movies, and yeah, I was. You know, I saw all those movies in the theater, even though I wasn't supposed to. You know, and I mean, you know, I was fighting the system. It's like my mom kind of bent the rules about me playing with neighborhood kids, and I took full advantage of it.
You had that little bit of glimmer of normalcy, or I think, Avanah and Josh really just.
Well, the interesting. No, I don't know.
Indoctrination was true and pure.
I don't know if it makes a difference or not, but Josh and I both had fathers, and this is a very patriarchal system, and our fathers were both still, like, my mom let me bend some of the rules too, but my dad didn't, and my mom didn't around my dad. You know what I mean?
Nail on the head.
That could have played some of that a little bit.
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Was there a joyous phase where you really dived in head first into secular pleasures and just thought, you just like, yeah, I'm gonna eat ice cream and listen to secular music and watch movies? Like, did you really double down on it and enjoy?
It's a great question, Morgan. I love that question.
I'll let you two go first, because
that's a great question. Like, what was the thing that, like, you're like, wow, like, this is.
I'm not very sure I care to divulge all the secular pleasures that I. I do like.
I love that. I love that answer. Enough said.
If there was, Go ahead, Avanah.
Unfortunately, or not unfortunately, I don't want to say it like that, but so happens to be that I put myself into full-on adulthood very early. So I was kicked out. I was homeless, house hopped, whatever.
You're
Tried
forced
to
to.
go to college because that was one of the big things that was a part of my falling out was I was trying to apply to go to college and that wasn't okay. And that started to cause the tension when I was living at home. So me now being out was like, well, I'm going to go to college. And I did go for one semester. And that could have been my time where I indulged in all the pleasures of the world. But I was very scared and thankfully had some wisdom because I promised myself I wasn't going to dorm because I just knew, like, again, I knew that my dad could manipulate me. I knew I was trained to be a people pleaser and just try to fit in at any cost. And I would always get myself into situations where I realized I don't even know what I believe about this or what I think is right or what I'm
Or you
comfortable
can't say no, maybe.
people tell me that I'm good, so I think I'm good. And I knew that about myself, and I was like, I could get into a lot of stuff I don't want to get into and get hurt or whatever.
That's wise.
And so I tried to just commute and go to college. And even with just commuting, I found myself in a number of uncomfortable situations. And being homeschooled and secluded your whole life and then dropped into college, I had an anxiety attack driving there on back for second semester, and I just turned around and went home and never went back. Like I just couldn't do it.
I had anxiety for you just thinking about that.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
So like I could have then, I kind of did, but it was more scary, not enjoyable, you know?
Right. Okay.
And then from then on, by the time I was 23, I was married for a year, but I got married, I had a kid, and then I got divorced, and now here I am, a single mom. So, you know, what am I going to do? I can't go out and get drunk with a 1-year-old at home. Like, you know, so really it wasn't until more recently my child is older and he's with his dad a few days a week, and I have, you know, one night out, I can go out. And even then it's like, I mean, I've never blacked out. I've only smoked weed.
That's okay.
I mean, I haven't gone absolutely crazy. I've enjoyed myself more, and like I do all the adult things, and it's great, and sometimes it's confusing, but I didn't really
well drinking and blacking out isn't the best thing about being an adult. Hey, at 41, I'll tell you right now, the best nights of my life when I don't have my kids is doing a painting, watching a horror flick that I love on TV, you know, burning my incense and say that's a good night for me. That's a great night.
My biggest thing, if you want to talk about the most joyous moment,
or the beach
right now in my life right now, because like I spent one night where I slept in a trash can.
Wow.
And I remember telling myself, like, this is not going to be my life. And it's 10 years later. That was when I was 18. I'm 28. I'm in the process of buying a home. I have a retirement fund. I have a healthy child. I have a fiance. I have a family. I have a career. I have health care. Like, I have all the things that I didn't have. I went from a traumatic family to nothing at all to making it all for myself. And it's like, yeah, I'm not, you know.
No, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Congratulated. Yeah.
Freaking made it.
Yes, you did.
A lot of people have had those experiences. You know, they're addicted to drugs or alcohol. They're cutting themselves.
Yeah.
The fact that, you know, that hasn't been happening. That's. Well, I don't know if it miraculous is the appropriate term for that.
That's tenacity, and you're a lioness. Honey.
Yeah, there's certainly a risk for it. Yeah.
You're a lioness.
Yeah. And one thing I wanted to really quick, I want to say one thing, because it's a compliment to all of us, because you have said, you know, that, you know, it's amazing that at such young ages we were questioning things or we were whatever. And I think the one positive thing that we were taught to do without any of the leaders realizing it, they taught us to question everything in the world. They taught us to do that. So I think that's one of the reasons why we weren't scared to question that as well. Like, they taught us to doubt the entire world and doubt
That's an amazing revelation.
That's a great point. That's a good point. I never thought about that. You're absolutely right.
In a roundabout way, they created who you were. With those strong minds, you guys
that's a rare
that. And yeah.
That's a rare thing, because most cults completely reject critical thinking. You're not allowed to question.
Well, I
So
don't
that's
They
think
did
they're
too.
thinking that
They
we
did
need people.
too, but they weren't. They weren't. They didn't know what they were doing. They did.
Absolutely.
It's just like some people were wired differently than others. Like like the three of us, we were able to. At various points of our life, we were able to think for ourselves. Meanwhile, you've got people out there like my mom was for a time, like that mother of that special needs child that I talked about, that are still locked into that.
Exactly.
Locked stock and barrel.
They're
Says
dependent.
a lot about who you are, for sure. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, it's gonna, and also you have survivors of other cults and everything, and if you notice the ones that come out and they're like really outspoken about it, are the numbers of the ones that are like out and talking in front of everybody and outspoken about it, like the three of us are. There's a lot less of us than there are of the people that are still like lost in it, or
Agreed.
or people that just turned it off and just I don't want to think about it anymore. There's a lot more of that than there are like activist type like the three of us.
That's very true, and that's why I thank you so much for doing what you're doing, because I think people who are in cults they're very scared. It's a very hard thing. I've never talked in depth like this with anybody from this kind of a situation. It's been very mind opening.
Absolutely.
For me. I'm sure Morgan as well.
I was about to ask, aside from podcasts, has there been any other kind of media coverage about this particular organization? Any documentaries or books? Anything?
There was a guy that did like a 5-minute documentary short, which you can find on YouTube, a guy named Jack Pennington. And then a guy in France did a 45-minute film called Deadly Prayers in America. It was on like sort of a French version of Netflix just for documentaries. I could get you a copy as long as you didn't post it anywhere if you wanted to watch it. But and then there was a guy that was doing interviews and was going to make it a podcast like a few years ago, and I don't know if anything ever came of it, because he grew up in the area where the main church was, even though he wasn't a part, so he knew about it. I don't know if the project just fell through or what happened, but I haven't heard anything about that.
Morgan, this is my next podcast. Does anybody want to be a co-host with me?
A cult podcast, yeah.
Yes. I'm not joking.
No. Anyone know what the statistics are in terms of like how many cults are functioning at any given time?
There's probably fewer now than there were back in, say, the 60s, 70s, and 80s, but I'm sure there's still a lot of them that are out there. I mean, Nexium, they were a cult, but they were more like a New Age cult and everything. But Keith Raniere, he was the true definition of a cult leader, and Keith Raniere ripped off a bunch of things from Scientology, which is also a cult. So they're out there. I mean, of course, I think that the Mormons are cultish. The fundamentalist Mormon groups, those are cults. I mean, you could a lot of the Jehovah's Witness thing.
Sure, yeah.
What I was just listening to, it's still an active cult. It was a woman who believes herself as Mary Magdalene.
Was that a recent thing?
Yes, it is. It's still an active cult, but I was listening to a podcast that was covering the start of the cult and then people who had left, and it's so interesting because I started listening to that right before Morgan told us we were going to do this podcast. I was like, well, this is weird, because I'd never really listened. But yeah, she was very brainwashing. She says things and does things. Yeah, I'm trying to find what the name of it was.
Is she the one that would get drunk and get on YouTube and just do all these drunken diatribes? Yeah, I can't remember what is. It's right on the tip of my tongue. Yeah, in my line of work, I listen to a lot of podcasts. So in my line of work, so.
Same.
Well, as an armchair evolutionary psychologist, I know that it doesn't surprise me that this kind of thing exists, because we're pack animals. We have a very strong need to belong somewhere. And a lot of people who get drawn into cults, they were cast out of their families, they were alone. And a lot of these cults, they of course, they don't use the word cult. They refer to it as a family. You have a family now, you're a part of our family. And that's very seductive if you're at a lonely place in your life. So.
But once they get you
Fire
in there, they spring the
Ministries.
trap.
Oh yeah, that's the trap.
What was it?
Freedom Fire Ministries.
Yeah, that's that.
Her name is Cheryl.
Interesting.
I have heard of. I've listened to a podcast about that one. I can't remember who did it, but I know
This is the one I listened to. It's really good. Oh, Cheryl Ruthven is her name, and she's the one who like told everyone they needed to collect cats because cats were going to be their way of like getting into heaven, and also believed kind of the Jehovah's Witness thing of the 144,000 or like the select few. It was just
we had that. We believed in the 144.
Oh, that's the chosen.
Oh, you do?
We did, yeah.
Wow. Okay, so that's right along there.
Well,
but
they never came out and said 144,000 and the group that I was in. But in listening to podcasts about the Jehovah's Witnesses and the 144,000, it's just the minuscule number of people worldwide that were actually part of this church. Yeah, it could have been the same thing, but still, I mean, yeah. So it's definitely the same mindset.
Definitely.
So, yeah.
As far as the Faith Assembly cult, like, besides everything that Josh mentioned, I've searched a lot. There's one like New York Times article that was written. It is like on Wikipedia as a cult, which is interesting. That my therapist showed that to me because I didn't like. She'd be like, it sounds like you grew up in a cult. Da da da. I'm like, no. And then she literally was like, go Google. She's like, Avanah, I want you to Google Hobart Freeman. She had a whole printout of all and it's just cult. And I'm like, holy crap, I was born into a cult. I'm like, okay, that was like an eye opener for me. Yeah.
There's a folder. Oh, sorry, we're still talking. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I've been in one newspaper article and 3 podcasts besides this one. So that's like the only other content out there.
Well, if you want to start one, hey, Morgan.
I want to write.
Josh and I tried to start one, but we weren't really cohesive together. It didn't really work out that well.
Yeah, you do have to have that. I think Morgan brought me on because you can tell that listen, I bring the craziness out of Morgan. He's a little more.
I've always wanted to write a story or do a show or something. I want to tell like my entire story, but not because I want it to be my story that's told. Like, I just feel like I've had this like full circle beginning to end plot and everything, and I just like have such a passion for bringing awareness to this because like so many times I've been sitting at a table and been like, this girl sitting next to me has no idea that I went through this, and like you never know that the person sitting across from you, and you know what I mean. And so to bring it,
I'd be sitting at dinner and look at you and think you were perfectly
right
raised,
and the whole concept of cults, especially recently, they've been kind of romanticized and it's all the time, oh my god, you grew up in a cult, like, and I'm like, I love to talk about it, don't get me wrong, but it's just kind of like this, like this isn't like some movie where I am my own hero. I mean, it is. I am my own hero, and it is like a movie, but it's right.
You're not the norm. You're the, what's the word I'm looking for? You guys are the word.
Reality. I don't know.
Not a lot of people get to where you are.
Right. And I just think it's important to bring awareness to the fact that it's something that's still going on. Yeah. And I don't know. I think seeing that people can survive from this can help other people survive from different things too, not just this, Religious abuse and narcissistic abuse are huge. And they're a very hard thing to put your finger on. because they just are an essence. It's just an essence that's intoxicating, and it's good to talk about it.
Yeah, I think a podcast that it was exposing cults or just kind of dove into them would be a huge public service.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I agree. You
Well,
guys
there's a
doing
bunch
this
of
as a
them out
public
there.
service.
Well, thank you very much for that.
One thing that do we want to talk about if there was anything positive that came out of the experience?
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. I didn't know if there would be, but yeah, what if you
Absolutely.
could name something, a silver lining? Yeah.
Well, I mentioned that the first location that the church was in when my family started going was in somebody's house, and they're just up there, because we'd come from Baptist church. We're used to just people singing around an organ grinder that can't keep a beat.
Yeah.
And
I feel you. I feel that.
And so you got these people up there, like playing these church songs and everything on acoustic guitars and whatnot. And I remember being there as like 6 years old, just fascinated by that. I told my parents that I wanted to do it, that I wanted to learn how to play guitar. So they bought me a cheap guitar, got me some lessons where they taught me the chords and everything, and that kind of opened a Pandora's box with me as far as music. If it hadn't been for that, I probably wouldn't have become a heavy metal musician.
That's a beautiful silver lining. That's a beautiful silver lining.
Yeah, and
Bill, I
that's
love it.
my passion. So
I love that, Bill.
So,
Avanah, what about you? Any silver lining that stands out?
Yeah.
Besides the fact that you're a badass lioness now.
Yeah. I mean, that is one of the silver linings. Like, I have had to be such a strong person from a young age, and I think that is I have learned so many tools. I have so many tools to survive because I had to have so many tools to survive, and so I'm really thankful for that. I'm really not scared to try to be aware. I'm not scared to think about what issues I need to work through. Like, I that's a silver lining within itself. I learned a lot of practical skills. Like, I am the trophy wife because, like, I literally can cook a badass meal and clean and multitask and run a family. But then
I'm sure you can cook
really
a meal.
cultured now, and so I can also be like in a what's the word? A worldly woman or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, I can be both,
That's awesome.
But, just, from a young age, just like doing the chore, like the work ethic that I was taught. I was taught such a work ethic. I was homeschooled, which really meant I was kind of teaching myself. So, like, just a lot of those practical skills that were instilled in me at such a young age, I am thankful for them. I wish there were other things that I experienced as a child, but I am really thankful for those skills that I have and the confidence I have in just adulting in general.
what do you do, by the way?
I'm a musician, and I was teaching privately for I actually started teaching when I was 16. I started teaching young girls in the neighborhood. So I was teaching for like 12 years. I recently quit teaching due to teaching through COVID and it just destroying my mental health and not being okay with that. And now I work at a brewery. I'm the social media coordinator, and I'm also a part-time bartender there as well.
Nice.
So that's what I do now. Aside from my own music, I just released an album, which is all about healing from
music. It's so crazy.
Yeah. But my whole album is all about, it's in two parts. The first 5 songs are about, when you asked me if I could say anything to my dad, I realized after I should have said I would tell him to listen to my album. Because the first 5 songs are about, some of them are written specifically to my parents, or they're about what I experienced as a child. And then the last 5 songs are about my experience out in the new world. So it's like I kind of think of it as like the first 5 songs are about me learning how to love myself, and then the last 5 songs are me learning how to love the world around me.
Well,
and all of that stuff to Morgan, so I could listen to it. That'd be great.
I'll tell you one thing. I think you would have a great memoir in you, like if you were to choose to write about your experiences.
For sure. I just need to help me. Like, if anyone out there wants to help me, I have everything. I just need a someone to help me put it into order. You know what I mean? Like I need someone to make me sit down with them once a week and start putting this into words. Basically, I have all the words. I just need a person to help me
That's
hit
a
them.
fascinating story.
But the
Sounds like you got a
Silver Lining is also
concept album.
for me as well.
Exactly. A concept album is for sure.
Yeah, I used music as therapy. I would sit down as a child at home and play the piano for 3 hours at night sometimes and just emotionally vomit on the piano. And now I have that as a skill. I play 5 instruments and I freaking love it. And I probably wouldn't have done it so passionately if I didn't emotionally need it so much. So
Well, of course.
In complete fuck you to your cult.
thank you.
Well,
Josh, what's your silver lining?
Honestly, I think my existence, because without the cult, my parents wouldn't have dropped out of school and made me. So, hey, I'm
heavy.
Thanks,
that is heavy. You know what? Damn good point. I love it.
And Bill, what was your silver lining?
Basically, I mean, maybe, like Avanah was saying that her music was kind of like therapy, and I guess, I didn't go through therapy, through a psychologist or anything like that, but I guess you could say that my music has been my therapy. I really recently released my first album as well.
Nice.
I've been doing this, man. That's epic.
I've been doing this for so many years, but I just released my first album.
And crazy. Love it.
Since then, I've just been releasing singles. But over the past, I got out of music for a long time, and I got back into it about 3 years ago, and in 3 years, I've released 15 songs, 10 on my album, and 5 additional.
I'd love to hear all of it. I'm a true believer. I mean, I like old classic rock with instruments. So, and I do believe that the best music is written through kind of the most tumultuous times. So, I would be very interested in listening to your guys, all of your music.
And, where can one find your music? Bill, where is it available?
If you
Avanah and I are both on Spotify. I mean, mine is Bill Selby, and it'll be a picture of me. I'm wearing glasses, and you can see the headstock of the guitar. It's a black and white picture with the verified check mark by it. That's mine, Bill Selby, Selby. And then Avanah?
Yeah, I'm on all streaming platforms, including Spotify. My name is my name, but Avanah, but no one knows how to spell it. That's
Can link it? Can he link it in the show notes for this? For
my
the
album is called Damage Undone, and the whole idea of the title is, you would think if you were to look at me from all my trauma, you'd be like, that girl's damaged, and you'd be like, damage done, and I'm like, no, it's undone.
Undone.
Like,
Yeah.
Damage undone.
Drop.
Literally.
Mic drop. Yes.
I mean, I'm on all platforms as well, but I really only really push the Spotify.
Yeah. The first
what do you want to? Come on, give us something. What do you want to promote? Even if it's just your beautiful face, what do you want to promote, Josh?
I wouldn't really say my face is all that beautiful. My music is. Oh, him.
Josh.
I thought you said you guys. I'm on a crappy headset, and I'm in a traffic jam in the middle of Atlanta right now.
I'm on my.
I can't think of anything. Love, peace, and happiness, I guess.
I love that. You know what? You're a man after my own soul.
Avanah
has a gift for pulling humans together.
Yeah.
He's like me to a lot of people. He like goes out on a limb and is like, hey, you want to meet this person? I'm gonna travel here and meet that person. You can come too. Like, he has a heart for community, and I think that's
nice.
I feel a good soul out of that face, because I'm able to look at 2 of them, and yeah, I'm without words.
Avanah,
and everyone on this podcast is gonna say, "Holy shit!" Rachel doesn't have words.
Avanah, do you have any gigs coming up? Any performances of your music?
I put myself in a tough situation only because I played most of the instruments when I recorded the music, but then I also can't play 5 instruments while performing live. Yeah. But I really want the full idea when I perform, plus COVID. So I have to finish recording. I'm releasing the last 5 songs of the album in a couple weeks, So that's my main goal. And then I will start performing actually at the brewery that I work at. Can I drop the name of the brewery? Probably.
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Actually, I'm not going to. Just
Oh,
because
okay.
of my personal, I don't want to attach my personal
Sure,
life.
no
in there with
problem.
it. But I hopefully will be performing more live.
And Bill, do you have any gigs coming up?
Nah, I'm in the same boat as Avanah is. I did everything on the album and the singles that I've released, and but I haven't been in a band since 2003. I mean, I played it. I filled in for somebody on bass guitar back in 2016, but that was the last gig that I've played. But with my job, I want badly to get another band together because I miss being on stage. But in my line of work, it's impossible, and it's kind of hard to find somebody, to find a career that pays what this one does with no degree or anything like that.
Sure.
And actually, you know what? If I had stayed in the cult, I wouldn't be able to do this job.
See?
Because going to the doctor is a sin, and you have to get a physical before you can get a CDL, and B, you have to be able to pass an eye test, and I have to wear glasses now. So, which that was big no. You can't wear glasses, and if it weren't for glasses, I wouldn't.
Then I would already be dead. Then
Yeah.
I'm legally blind. I would be passed away.
I want to say real quick. I said I do a lot of the music myself, which I did, but my producer also did a lot of work. And I just have to say that I work with a producer that I would not have been able to do it completely on my own without him. So just want to throw that out there.
Have support.
Yeah.
So, Morgan, any other questions before we wrap up?
No, that's it. We're at over 2 hours.
I know. I can't believe how fast that went. Again, you guys, Morgan will end, but before he does, this has been such an amazing experience for me.
Enriching.
Very enriching, very mind-opening, things I did not know. I will be obsessing over this because I do have an anxiety disorder. So I will think about this for a long time. In a good way, though. Not in a good way, but the more you know, the more you can be aware and prepared for. This is something I actually don't know a lot about. I thank you for letting our viewers and anybody who might be in the situation, giving them hope. You all just seem so strong, and I'm awed by you and inspired by you. And thank you again so much for your time and coming on.
Man, she took the words out of my mouth. I feel the same way. Yeah. Thank you guys so much.
I'm glad. Thank you for reaching out to me after I had made that post on that Facebook page.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just trying. I wasn't expecting anything like this. I was just kind of wanting to get some chit chat going. But this is cool, and I've never really heard. I mean, I've never really heard Josh's story because when we were talking about doing our podcast before, we were going into it not having said a word about it to each other, so that you get kind of the fresh effect on it. We tried it; it didn't really work out. But I didn't know anything about Avanah here.
I'm so glad. Then we've all learned something, and again, thank you. You guys reach out at any time, honestly. Podcast, whatever. But
Great.
Morgan.
Well, with no further ado, I wish you guys good night. Thank you again for doing the show.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for having us.
Good night.
You guys have a great
Take care, guys. Have a good night.
Bye.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.